It's so funny how history was written in a way to make it look like the British came and liberated Kenya from the Omani Arabs, and then they gave us independence because they realized, okay, sasa tumewafanya mmekuwa, you're smart enough, you can run yourself, and they gave us independence. And then how they decided that, okay, fine, let's take a bunch of people who are fighting for their land and say these people fought for independence for the country and shun every other region that also fought for itself. And we're looking, so it was more of history was put into the British, and then we will give the president the Kikuyu and make him look good. And one thing that they never teach us in school is that Kenyatta killed more Mau Mau than the British.
The Zanzibari Sultanate was already separate from the Omani Sultanate since 1861. You know, that's another part that's usually never talked about. It had already become independent from the Sultanate in Oman. It used to be one Sultanate all the way from Muscat, all the way to the east coast of Africa and stretching across to even some parts of what's modern day Somalia. But there was a sultan who died. I think it was Sultan bin Said. And from when that sultan died, there was a separation. You know, like now the Zanzibaris, where now Mombasa was part of that sultanate, were now independent. But that's a part of history that's also, you know, like never mentioned and never talked about.
At least it's not even coast. The Portuguese colonized Kenya before the British. Remember when that there was a show here we were talking about religion, and I think I told people, most people assume that Catholics that came to Kenya came from the British side. They didn't come. The British actually were the Anglicans who came in later.
Yeah.
The first Christians in Kenya were Catholics, and they came from the Portuguese.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Those were the first people who came in, and the Portuguese were trading deep into Kisumu way before all that way. So they had already put that. They're actually the first people who started doing that slave trade thing. And later on, it came on that the Omanis, that the Arabs are the one then who came in second time and took it. So it's so funny how history was written in a way to make it look like the British came and liberated Kenya from the Omani Arabs, and then they gave us independence because they realized, okay, sasa tumewafanya mmekuwa, you're smart enough, you can run yourself, and they gave us independence. And then how they decided that, okay, fine, let's take a bunch of people who are fighting for their land and say these people fought for independence for the country and shun every other region that also fought for itself. And we're looking, so it was more of history was put into the British, and then we will give the president the Kikuyu and make him look good. And one thing that they never teach us in school is that Kenyatta killed more Mau Mau than the British.
These are lessons that will never be taught, and you know, like even on that aspect of coastal history, 1 month because the 10-mile coastal strip became part of Kenya as a treaty that was signed in Lancaster, and that's how that coastal strip, because it was under the Sultanate, you know, like at that time, the Sultanate was a protectorate, and then shortly after that, 1 month later, there was a revolution in Zanzibar. And, you know, like Odhiambo Levin Opio wrote about that last week. And I was going back to some books that I was reading, whereby there was a relationship between when Kenya was getting independence, because shortly 1 month after, there was a revolution in Zanzibar. And then that revolution followed a shotgun. There was a shotgun marriage that made Zanzibar. There was a forced union between Zanzibar and Tanganyika, which is what created what's now called Tanzania. So the British were very intent on splitting the groups that were there within the Sultan. What people forget, you know, when you talk about the Sultanate, the Zanzibari Sultanate was already separate from the Omani Sultanate since 1861. You know, that's another part that's usually never talked about. It had already become independent from the Sultanate in Oman. It used to be one sultanate all the way from Muscat, all the way to the east coast of Africa, and stretching across to even some parts of what's modern day Somalia. But there was a sultan who died. I think it was Sultan bin Said, and from when that sultan died, there was a separation. You know, like now the Zanzibaris, where now Mombasa was part of that sultanate, were now independent. But that's a part of history that's also, you know, like never mentioned and never talked about. So one of the things that the British was very keen on was making sure that those communities that were there together were split, and that's how the 10-mile strip ended up being part of Kenya. And then now all of a sudden, these islands that were independent are now being made to be part of Tanganyika in what's Tanzania today. And even if you go to Zanzibar, people are still not happy with that union for many reasons. This is a very controversial topic. Tanzanians will get mad at me when they hear me talk about this topic.
You'll
sometimes.
be kicked out of their groups.
Yeah, but these are just some of those things that I think people need to start figuring out to know, you know, like some of the shenanigans.
Are they like the Israelis refusing that Gaza needs to be solo beans? When you're talking about the beef or the way they get the Tanzanians will get upset. Talking about the union between, or whatever transpired between them and Tanganyika. And Zanzibar, sorry.
No, you know, the issue, now this is, you know, like, these
2
are
minutes,
parts,
2 minutes.
yeah,
Alia naogopa kusema ukweli. The issue is this. Zanzibar is a Muslim dominated.
There you go. There
region.
you go. There you go. Mika is
So
feeling
they
it.
feel that the way that them being ruled by mainland doesn't cater for them religiously as they want it to be. If the citizenship of Zanzibar had it their way, nyinyi watu mnaenda kushika matako huko amngekuwa mnaenda. Hizo resort hazingekuwa.
So now, okay. Now here's the interesting thing.
Yani Mika umetuambia tu hivyo ati sisi ni kafiri.
No, this is the interesting thing with Zanzibar is that it was governed by Muslim law. The Sultanate, you know, like at least some variation of Muslim law. It wasn't like necessarily 100%, but it was governed by Muslim law.
It was actually most of the Sultans, because even when the British came in, the British representative had to convert into Islam to be allowed to stay there.
Yes, so it was governed by...
they had Muslim law. Yeah.
It was governed by Muslim laws. So now you see you had Zanzibar and those areas in the coast, you know, like Mombasa and all the way to Lamu. So now what the British were trying to do, they were trying to cut up, you know, like these areas that were being governed by Muslim laws. Here's the interesting thing that happened. Because Mombasa was given to Kenya by treaty, there was still a sultan in existence when Lancaster was happening. So Lancaster, because now he was also cornered by the British, Lancaster, he tried to defend his people, and he said, okay, if you guys are going to take this part and make it a part of Kenya, to make Kenya have a coast, because now one of the reasons why the British wanted Kenya to have a coast is for their own reasons. They wanted to be able to move goods from the interior very easily without crossing an international border and ship them out. So now he said, okay, to defend my people, we have to sign these laws. So all these people who complain, why are Muslims being treated special? Why do they have Qadhi's courts? Why do they have this? Why do they have that? It goes back to the treaty that formed Kenya. If you break that, we no longer have Kenya as is. That's a treaty that formed Kenya as we know today. And the genius that was done on that treaty on the Kenyan side was that these laws were to apply, of course, to the people in the 10-mile strip and any other Muslims who live beyond the 10-mile strip. So even those Muslims who are living in the interior, who did not have these rights before, now you're starting to have these rights on marriage, on inheritance. So that was a very genius. And the reason why I say it's genius, it's very interesting because on the Tanzanian side, it was a revolution. So the revolution, there's no treaties, So Tanzania, very interesting. Tanzania do not have kadhi courts like Kenya does. Tanzania does. Oh. No, Tanzania doesn't. It's actually a
so
very
it's
big
only
privilege.
Zanzibar that has it, and we do.
So even Zanzibar, I don't know if Zanzibar has kadhi courts. So people are allowed to, like do their marriages within their own faith.
Correct.
But like with kadhi courts, it's a whole judicial system.
Yes.
It's a whole judicial system where there's certain aspects where we're allowed to govern ourselves on personal matters, issues of family, nini, their matters. So it's very interesting on the Tanzanian side, and this is something I came to find out very recently from a Tanzanian scholar who was talking about it. He was like, even Kenya has this, because now these are some of the rights that they were trying to demand for. And the interesting thing is that Tanzania, you combine mainland and the island, Tanzania is almost 50-50, Muslim and Christian. It's almost half enough, yeah. Tanzania is almost half enough. So now with Kenya, there's this small privilege that we're left with. But sasa hizo laws, those are the ones that Mzungus did not, those are the things they did not want there. Because remember, the British were going all around the world trying to break around. They already did what they did in Palestine. They were trying to dilute
Balfour Declaration.
Yeah, these Muslim territories. They like they engineered the end of the caliphate.
Yes.
Like when they tried to gonganisha the Turks and the Arabs, and then they left everyone hanging, and then the caliphate just died out like that. Yeah. So there was a lot of things, and wasn't the topic of today.
Nakba. Go to Al Jazeera, look for the Nakba.
Yeah, it wasn't the topic of today, but these are just those things that sometimes
it was
history.
Ali trying to school us on a Muslimicity.
No, it's just history. It's just history. It's not.
I had to come up with a word, but
but